new ship.
For what?
Uh, New ship for crossout.
Oh, nice.
Oh, what new shit is it gonna be?
Oh my Hello, hello, hello.
To draw in an audience that was generally very young. Furthermore, the simplicity and repetitiveness of the animations made it somewhat simple for these newfound members of the community to start creating their very own content, joining the ranks of creators they idolized. Through this cycle, the community began to drastically expand, leading to a massive influx in visibility. Channels like Rad, Wolfiechu, Ginja Ninja Owo, and more were able to accrue subscriber counts in the millions, and at a certain point, there were countless creators popping up each and every day, hoping to tap into this fresh new market. But as you might have expected, in a space where a great deal of both the fans and the creators are children, it wasn't long before bad actors began to present themselves. And that brings us to the man of the hour, David. From here on out, I'll be covering David's degenerate online career, going through his major controversies in as close to chronological order as I can. Although, because of how short his reign of terror truly was, and because of how many degenerate things he was able to accomplish within that limited time frame, I will have to skip around just a bit in order to avoid talking about multiple situations at the same time. Also, for the sake of structure, I've decided to split this story into 3 chapters, each based on the internet's general view of David at different times, and then a separate chapter discussing the aftermath of his arrest. I believe this makes it easier to see just how quickly his activities escalated, from being a mere nuisance to a deplorable creep, and then to an outright criminal. And furthermore, I think it can help highlight a problem that I and many others have with communities like these, the tendency to conflate serious issues and allegations with petty gripes and dramas. This will become more evident as the story is told, but as you'll see, there will be many instances of people grouping in the most mundane criticisms with the most horrific accusations. But I digress. With all that out of the way, let's start at the beginning, when David emerged on the online content creation scene and established himself as a grade A loser. David's earliest efforts at online content creation are difficult to track, in large part due to the fact that almost everything related to him has, at this point, been wiped from the face of the internet. However, from what few references still remain, we can see that he actually began as a gaming-centric channel on YouTube. Though he would later become more infamously known as Cristalli, his channel did not originally bear this name. Instead, it was called Valdrox. During this era, David would make an effort to draw in an audience by imitating the content of an extremely popular gaming channel called Fernanfloo. And although he would be unsuccessful in growing his brand during this era, it is still interesting to look back on. Because his content consisted of him recording himself speaking directly to the camera, David's face, and the clear fact that he was a man who primarily spoke Spanish, became linked to the Valdrox name. This is important to keep in mind, because after pivoting to making animation memes, he would try to conceal this, instead choosing to present himself as a 16-year-old girl. Now, the act of concealing your status as an adult man in order to pretend to be a teenage girl is questionable even under the best of circumstances, but as we'll see later, this was an integral part of David's scheme to draw in potential victims and get their guard down. But we'll get to all that later. For now, let's talk about David's animation meme debut. He began uploading animations across multiple sites, including DeviantArt, Instagram, and YouTube, starting in 2017. To accompany this change in content, he switched the name of his YouTube channel from Valdrox to Cristalli, and not too long after that to Cristalli and Zafiro, named for two of the characters that frequently appeared in his animations. Although, as a side note, even after this change, he apparently accidentally left traces of his old gaming content on the channel, including playthroughs of some very tasteful games that may or may not have involved characters from My Little Pony in some compromising situations. Regardless, it was clear that he'd gone all in on this rebrand, including fully committing to his new identity as a 16-year-old girl. To make this more believable, he would actually begin hiring voice actresses to provide lines that he would use in his videos, and when people would compliment these voices in the comment sections, he would make no effort to clarify that they weren't actually his. At one point, he even had one of the voice actresses record themselves responding to comments to further sell the illusion that the voice actually belonged to him. We'll discuss more controversies having to do with these voice actresses later, but for now, just assume he was in the habit of not crediting them for the express purpose of maintaining his cover. After all, if he were to credit them, it would reveal that he was paying someone to speak for him, and that would certainly raise questions. Unfortunately for the animation meme community, and frankly the world at large, this scheme was largely successful. Through this technique of disguising his true identity, as well as various other equally manipulative ones, like gaming YouTube's algorithm to get his videos recommended an unholy number of times, subbotting in order to make his channel appear larger to draw in new followers, and even creating fake accounts that resembled more popular channels in order to fake his own endorsements, David was able to burrow his way into the community like a parasite, and before anyone even noticed, he was already entrenched. Judging by a video he posted near the end of 2017 titled Cristalli and Zafiro Rewind, his YouTube channel had accrued more than 1,000 subscribers within the first few months of uploading, which is no easy task considering that the vast majority of YouTube channels never reach this milestone at all. This growth evidently continued, with records showing that by the end of January 2018, he had gained another 5,000 subscribers. This number would only continue to skyrocket over the coming months, to the point that, come October of the same year, he had obtained nearly 80,000 subscribers. This unbelievable growth seemed to show that the Cristalli channel was on the fast track to becoming a mainstay in the animation meme community. Or at least, it could have been, if its name hadn't been mired in controversy from nearly the moment it began uploading. Specifically, there were three main controversies that plagued David's online presence during these early months, and these make up the majority of our little first chapter. David faced backlash for, first of all, the clear presence of sexually suggestive material within his content. Second, the fact that he was very obviously tracing artwork from more popular animators within the community. And third, his absolutely atrocious responses to criticism. First, let's talk about his not safe for work content. The animations interesting. Allegedly, Holly had claimed that she actually approved of the messages that Joshua was sending to women in the community because the two of them were a polyamorous couple who were flirting with Muppet fans together, much to the shock of the entire internet. This would later be backed up in a series of Twitter posts made by Holly on her own personal account, where she refers to herself as the, quote, moderator of social media interactions for Muppet history, and reiterates that she had seen and approved of the messages sent to Malone Pops. Additionally, in contrast to the increasing number of posts coming out from other women claiming to have also been harassed by the Muppet History account, Holly states that, other than the message sent to Malone's Pops, she would not consider any of the other messages sent by the Muppet History account to be inappropriate. Holly would further attempt to discredit the claims made by Malone's Pops by counter-accusing her of sexual harassment, showcasing a message that she had sent to the Muppet History account. Muppet History starts the exchange by stating, "I got tipsy with Brian Henson," who, for the non-Muppet heads out there, is actually the head of the Jim Henson Company and son of the creator of the Muppets, Jim Henson. Never say you don't learn things on YouTube, okay? Anyway, in response to this message, Malone's Pops apparently said, "OMG, you guys touch tips, what? Haha. Anyway, that's awesome." As you might imagine, this post did not go over well, as the general consensus in the replies was that these messages were extremely different in tone from the ones that had been sent by Joshua, and it was also stated that even if they had been evidence of harassment on Malone's Pop's side, she was not the only one coming out against the account, meaning that this defense would have to apply to every one of those women as well for it to be valid. Furthermore, some of the replies referenced the apology made by Muppet History, and how it didn't exactly line up that the official account was apologizing whilst Holly was simultaneously trying to fight back against the allegations. After all, why would Joshua and Holly apologize if there was no wrongdoing to apologize for? That is some grade A girl math, and you know what? To the girl in my audience, you can take offense this time. Regardless, these public posts were apparently not the only damage control that Holly had attempted to run, as screenshots have also been posted of DMs she has sent behind the scenes to people who have been posting about the situation. For example, a user known as Moomin posted messages he had allegedly received from Holly in which she suggested that he was engaging in libel, or written defamation, for saying that people have come forward about what they call Joshua's inappropriate behavior. And well, if that's libel, then let's just say, I better hire a lawyer. All of this, combined with Joshua apparently calling people discussing the situation in a Muppet fan Discord server goes, and saying he did what everyone said to do and made an apology, does not seem to indicate that Joshua and Holly feel very bad for what they've done. But as I always say, what do I know? Regardless, since I keep bringing it up, this seems like a good segue to the Muppet History account's official apology, or rather, apologies, since, as you'll recall, there was another that was quickly deleted before many people could read it. While the Nothing Burger apology that still exists on the Muppet History account is signed by both Joshua and Holly, the original apology was signed only by Josh, and it appears to have been made in a much more emotional state, which is presumably what led Joshua to provide far more insight into how widespread the allegations really are than he likely wanted to. The apology reads as follows. "I've been running Muppet History for the last 6 years. In that time, I've said terrible things to people, belittling and insulting things, inappropriate things, and have gone against everything I've tried to make this page about, and everything Jim Henson stood for. To those people, I am deeply sorry. I've let down those subscribed to my Patreon and not provided the things I offered. To those who feel scammed, I am sorry. I've used my audience irresponsibly as to go after people who have brought up genuine concerns and criticisms. That use of my platform and position is disgusting. I'm thankful that there are finally people who are standing up to hold me accountable for my actions in the past. Whether it was prior to now or recently, I have to be held accountable for my actions and should strive to do better. I'm disappointed and ashamed. I've let down my friends, my wife, and the community as a whole. My hope is that I learn from my actions, receive the help I need, and become the person I have pretended that I am. Joshua." There's a lot to unpack here, and this post really makes it seem like the whole situation goes a lot deeper than the original allegations. Frankly, there are things referenced in this apology that I had virtually no knowledge of until I read it, namely the belittling and insulting things Josh claims to have said, and the unfulfilled Patreon offerings. Let's start with the Patreon, because it seems like the more straightforward one to tackle. The Muppet History Patreon was created in 2019. And while there is an option to join for free, fans can also choose to support the account by paying $2 a month, which nets them in return exclusive reviews and history videos. Or at least it used to when I wrote this script 2 days ago, but the Patreon is gone now, so disregard that. I don't really want to speculate on the exact benefit that Joshua is referring to when he mentions unfulfilled Patreon promises in his apology. However, I did look into the history of the Patreon a bit, finding that, at least in 2021, it used to offer other, more expensive tiers, worth $5 and $15 respectively. In this year, we can see that the page boasted an impressive 244 patrons. Even if we assume that every single one of these patrons was subscribed to the lowest level tier and paying $2 a month, that comes out to $488 a month, or nearly $6,000 per year, which I'm sure I don't need to say is a substantial amount of money. Yes, this is the high level of intellectual thought you guys are here for, huh? Beyond putting into perspective how much is really at stake if the couple does not fulfill their Patreon promises, this amount of money also adds context for the next claim: the belittling and insulting comments Joshua claims to have made while using the Muppet History account. This seems to me to tie in to part of the current apology, which states, "In building this community, we have been overly protective, confusing fellow fan accounts for competition." Since the time that apology was posted, many users have left comments referencing instances in which Muppet History would apparently mock and disparage fellow Muppet accounts, including reportedly telling someone that their Muppet page was not a real Muppet page. Whatever that means. Likely in an attempt to cement themselves as the king of the online Muppet fandom. And the reason I chose to discuss this after the Patreon section is because I feel it gives context to their reason for being so competitive. To us, from the outside looking in, this situation is hilarious. I mean, the idea of an account as innocuous as Muppet History being a ruthless kingpin who guards their territory by any means necessary is just funny. But when real money in Patreon subscriptions, ad revenue, and merchandise sales are on the line, it all starts to make a lot more sense. There is a genuine reason for Joshua and Holly to not only be so protective of their image, as can be seen in their not-so-subtle attempts to obfuscate the true extent of their actions with a vague apology and reach out to people in private to beg them not to talk about their experiences publicly, but also for them to put down others in the community, and that reason is money. It's easy to see why they tore down this original apology, and why their new one is much more impersonal and brand safe, giving no indication as to what they might have done or why people might be upset with them. The moves they have made in the past few days have cemented their status in the eyes of many internet users as very scummy people, and that can generally be seen in the fact that someone like me, who has never expressed interest in the Muppets on the internet, is being shown countless tweets dunking on Muppet History. Like, we have officially calculated the smallest amount of power a person can go mad with, and it's running the Muppet History account on Twitter. Or, man, I just wanted to see pictures of Muppets. Why does a Muppet History account have allegations? The internet has turned against Joshua and Holly following their alleged abuse of Muppet fame. And so, let's discuss what comes next for them. Ultimately, as things stand now, Joshua and Holly claim to be taking a step back from posting personally on the internet. Regardless, it seems clear that this drama is not merely going to go away, as there are currently more and more posts coming out seemingly by the minute, doing everything from poking fun at the lunacy of the situation to expressing disappointment and disgust at this use of a platform that hides behind such a family-friendly farce. There are also various other women who have continued to come out and claim that they too have received inappropriate messages from the account. Beyond this, in researching for this video, I even came across various full-length news articles explaining the Muppet history controversy, and in all likelihood, they won't be the last. Social Blade shows that the Muppet History Twitter has hemorrhaged more than 11,000 followers as of the time I'm writing this script. It's now more than 24,000, by the way. And even their Instagram, which is more isolated from the majority of the posts bashing them, has lost more than 7,000. I was gonna end this video with some speculation about what we could expect if the Muppet History account ever responded again, but well, I took too long to edit this video, and Muppet History posted yet another apology, with this one once again being signed only by Joshua. This one is a lot more clear, concise, and straightforward, and it immediately owns up to the fact that messages sent by the account had been dishonest, manipulative, and sexually inappropriate. It does attempt to claim, however, Holly was not involved in the sending of those messages, and had made all of her online statements only in an attempt to defend Joshua. Next, Joshua claims he will be getting therapy to repair his relationship with his wife and hopefully become a better person, and for the foreseeable future, the Muppet History page will be completely inactive, as Joshua and Holly will no longer be posting to it, and it will not be sold off or given to another person. So, there you have it. That's about as conclusive and clear-cut of a confession as you can ask for, especially after so many attempts to obfuscate the truth. The only wrench it seems to throw into the overarching story is that it claims Holly was not involved in the wrongdoings of the account. Rather, it states that she had merely rushed to defend her husband because she loved him. Whether or not you choose to believe Joshua's word here, or if you want to continue seeing him and Holly as the double trouble polyamorous Muppet couple, I will leave up to you all. Regardless, I do think it is good to get a bit of closure and honesty in the situation, despite the fact that it seems clear to me that this third apology only came out because Joshua had been backed into a corner, with the Muppet History account's second apology having received over 2 million views at this point. So in all likelihood, this only happened because of the incredible amount of pressure and scrutiny they faced. But that's about all the commentary I had to offer on that front. So let's finally get to my conclusion. At the end of the day, there are a few things I wanted to say about this situation. First of all, I did not know there were so many accounts dedicated to Muppet posting. This is actually crazy. But second of all, this whole situation genuinely seems to me to be a great demonstration of the Streisand effect, which is a phenomenon that occurs when attempts to hide or censor information backfire, only serving to draw more attention to it. I mean, I literally never would have looked into this situation if I hadn't seen this tweet on my timeline referencing the fact that Muppet History had deleted their original apology before anyone even got a chance to read it. The fact that I couldn't locate it at first only made me more curious, leading me to specifically seek it out instead of just believing what other people were saying about the situation, and that's what led to me covering it in the first place. Again, never say I don't teach you anything. This is premium edutainment right here. Next, I think it actually has been clear to many people following the Muppet History Twitter account for a while now that Joshua was more interested in making the account about himself and his personal life than about, Muppet history. And when considering that this is how fans have been feeling about the account for a long time, the fact that it's become a vessel for the greed of the owners rather than the love of the game becomes a lot less surprising. Overall, I feel like I just completely overloaded my brain with a massive amount of information I never needed to know. But at the end of it all, I can't help but feel kind of sad. Sure, it's funny to joke around about the perils of online Muppet fame, but at the end of the day, this is just another instance of someone taking advantage of a beloved family-friendly franchise for their own personal gain, whether that be financial, influential, or sexual. And unfortunately, just like the backlash Muppet History is currently facing, this too is something that shows no signs of stopping, and that makes me just a bit sad. But what do I know? I've just been your host, Jormy49. What a ride, and good night. I hope you all enjoyed this slightly more lighthearted video. I mean, I still covered allegations because of course I did, but at least compared to my last video, this is definitely a lot less heavy. I've been working on a bigger project for a long time that is pretty heavy, which I may or may not be uploading to the channel soon. But in the meantime, thank you all for
I'll start off with the weird but still tame furry stories, and as time goes on, I'll dive into the disturbing and very illegal. I went through a lot of suffering while making this. I'll show you the clip without context first. Yep, there's not really a whole ton of context behind this video. It may look creepy and haunt you in your dreams, but North Fur FX, the creators behind this abomination, are just a few artists who do latex prosthetic masks for furries, but also movies and theaters as well. They got Shrek, but also various animals such as vampire bats, crows, donkeys, and the list goes on. Straight nightmare fuel, but for only a couple $100 you can turn yourself into every animal, ogre, monster you want. The pizza incident refers to an event that happened at Big Lil FurCon, which is a furry convention. On September 22nd, 2021, Maine Wolfie created a poll asking if anybody wants to release their bodily fluids onto his pizza that he would order during the BLFC. The poll got 577 votes, with almost 70% being in favor of releasing their fluids. And everybody attending his party would get free pizza nonetheless, so win-win I guess. Finally, on October 22nd, during the second day of Big Lil FurCon, Maine Wolf hosted a pizza party. He ordered 6 pizzas, and yes, one of them would meet its disturbing fate. He would later post a tweet confirming that 19 people released their children onto that unlucky pizza. Here's a picture for you. Let it burn into your retina. Now that might have been a little weird, but fortunately the group decided against eating the pizza and just left it outside in the hallway instead. And this part actually started a bit of controversy, since a couple of Twitter people, correctly so, tweeted that a hotel hallway wouldn't be the best place to leave such a pizza, since minors can work as cleaning staff, and cleaning staff typically has enough to deal with in general. So the pizza was promptly disposed of. After it sat in the hallway for 3 hours, a few people touched it, and a few people hopefully lied about their actions. Nobody was actively hurt in the process though, which will not be the case for the later stories. In 2015, a person called Magnus Deridian, or his real name Robert Sokovsky, would create a fursuit that was politically charged, to say the least. His suit was basically a walking Confederate flag. If you don't know what the Confederate flag stands for, go look it up. But for many, it's linked to the defense of slavery, not all people being created equally, etc. It's used by various groups, such as the Ku Klux Klan. I think that paints a good enough picture. This political kind of vibe fit perfectly with the current time, since the elections were just around the corner, and Magnus was actively promoting Trump. Since the furry community, more often than not, tends to be more on the other side of the political spectrum, he obviously got a bit of hate on Twitter and stuff. But that would be nothing compared to the next events that'll happen. And they're hilarious and disturbing at the same time. Magnus would decide to take a suit to the Midwest Fur Fest, which is another furry convention. He was detained and banned from the convention relatively quickly for his own safety, since people started noticing his suit and were obviously annoyed. But Magnus did not give up. 2 years later, in 2017, Magnus would try again and attend the AnthroCon, but this time he actually tried to conceal the flag under a white sheet. His suit was obviously still against AnthroCon's policies, so he was kicked out. But they actually found out that he has not paid for his membership, so he was banned from the whole convention until he made payments, which I'm not sure if he ever did. Now his last appearance probably takes the cake though. During the Midwest Fur Fest in 2017, Magnus tried to sneak into the convention, the one that he got banned from before, but he was still noticed since he literally wore a German World War I helmet as part of his fursuit in the hotel lobby. And he supposedly also said some pretty racist stuff and just stuff you shouldn't say in general. Because of all of that, he was arrested December 1st in his underwear. What a way to start the month. He then proceeded to create a GoFundMe campaign to try to raise money for any legal fees, but the campaign was deleted, most likely because nobody would give up their hard-earned money for this cause. Now, all of these events weren't actually his first controversy, since Magnus had quite a long history of criminal charges before all of this happened, and that is also why he's gonna come up in the next story as well. This happened in 2014 during the Midwest Fur Fest. That convention has gone through some stuff, bro. That year, over 5,400 furries were just happily talking and chilling, just doing their thing. Everything went well until December 7th, the last night of the event. A chlorine gas attack sent 19 attendees to the hospital. Some furries on the 9th floor of the hotel were just doing their thing when they started smelling this disgusting odor that wasn't coming from another furry, but something else. It got so bad that at 12:45 a.m. they decided to call the Rosemont Public Safety Department to see what's going on. By 1 a.m. the entire hotel was evacuated. and everyone inside the hotel was sent over to the Stevens Convention Center. When firefighters checked out the scene, they found a broken glass jar with white powder in it on the 9th floor stairway, and there was also some kind of liquid on the walls too, not the type of liquid that was on the pizza though. It turns out the air contained crazy levels of chlorine gas, which was most likely not very good for your lungs. Just my guess though. Right after the gas leak, the police said that it looked like someone did this on purpose, and so they launched a criminal investigation. The police and even the FBI talked to suspects, hotel guests, employees, and even hospital staff. This was a big deal now. The people attending these furry events were scared because they didn't know if these attacks would keep coming, and a big convention was coming up as well. The FBI kept digging into the case, and one of the main suspects was the one and only Magnus. First, if Magnus would be the actual perpetrator, it wouldn't have been his first chemical attack. As already said, his criminal history is quite long, and so the police actually searched his apartment. They didn't really find anything except for a roll of red duct tape, which belonged to one of his roommates. But they did confiscate the duct tape because it looked very similar to the one that was used for the construction of the gas device jar. When he was asked where he was between 11 and 12:30 a.m. on that day, he said that he was on the higher floors with one of his roommates, which would also align with the fact that it all happened on the 9th floor. But at the end, there wasn't any concrete evidence to actually prove that Magnus was at fault here, and he obviously denies it himself. So this is all just alleged. Now let's go down a level into the more disturbing things. Hypnotist Sappho, also known as Valerie, was a 21-year-old, relatively small content creator in the furry community. In the summer of 2021, she started her journey by getting into VR chat and doing hypnosis sessions. They would range from big group sessions to get everybody to relax.
A nice, relaxing, anxiety-free kind of triggers, so
which were safe for work, to not so safe for work solo sessions. She would then take the safe for work sessions and upload them on her YouTube channel, and she built a small following by doing exactly that. That is everything you were able to see from the outside. While she seemed like a wholesome person trying to help people in VR chat, she actually was a pretty disturbing individual. Sappho would eventually meet Gray over VR chat, somewhere between July and September of 2021. A 16-year-old teenager. They would talk over Discord, and it would eventually lead to them doing VR online cuddling sessions, and she would kind of take the role as a mother figure in their chats. That eventually escalated to even more inappropriate stuff happening in VR chat. You know, more than just cuddling. Gray fortunately eventually realized that what they were doing was very, very weird and borderline illegal, so they reported it to the admins of the specific VR chat worlds they visited. The admins swiftly banned Sappho, and she would be perma-banned on the VR chat Discord as well. This is far from over though. Following this ban, Sappho would eventually decide to create her own Discord server for furries and stuff like that, and she would eventually open up a channel for drawn images of animals that were definitely not safe for work, or honestly safe for life. One of the mods, Matcha Tiger, confronted Sappho on this, essentially asking if she was a zoophile. She would go on and say that she respected the community as a therapist and doesn't think of it as anything wrong. Because of that, Matcha then decided to cut ties with Sappho and uploaded a tweet, or a twit longer, exposing her as somebody who supports animal love. In order to sweep this controversy under a rug, Sappho would use a very interesting tactic that definitely backfired. September 11th, 2021, Sappho would post a video coming out about things. A 36-minute rant essentially, where she fully admits to being a zoophile.
I am a zoophile. I do not have a thing for humans. I am more attracted to dogs, like German Shepherds.
In that video, she tries to justify her love for animals by comparing it to the LGBTQ community, who used to be much less accepted than nowadays, which of course is not the best comparison, given that animals can't really give consent. This very video would gain her a ton of backlash and attention from all corners of the internet, including the furry community. Sappho wouldn't step down and make an apology video though, but she doubled down instead, skipping over her response music video to the haters. She would start an organization called Zoophiles Engagement for Tolerance and Acceptance North America, short ZNA, a group that is supposed to act as a safe space for people like Sappho who are also zoophiles or interested in that stuff. Less than 2 months later, this organization would crumble, as somebody inside the organization tried to transfer the very little funds they were able to raise into their own private wallets. And the whole organization and marketing was basically built off of lies, but I won't get into that. This still wouldn't be the end of Sappho's controversial history though. You gotta know, Sappho first denied all the allegations of being attracted to minors and doing stuff with minors. But on December 13th, Sappho would fully admit to being a merp, which stands for minor attracted person. aka and she admitted to it by making multiple tweets arguing that the age of consent is an iffy thing, etc. She would also talk about her being attracted to younger people, but only sometimes. And her excuse was that most of her partners have actually been older than her. All of this would lead to her Twitter account being suspended. Being suspended on Twitter is a different kind of achievement. She would then also be caught talking inappropriately to other 16-year-olds, which also included exchanging explicit images, voice messages, which I've listened to, and I'm severely traumatized, and doing more than just therapy sessions in VR chat again. So the whole not being attracted to humans was a goddamn lie. If you're eating right now, I'm sorry. Brown-nosed pup, aka Messy Tails, is a very mysterious individual. You could say he's kinda like an urban legend. He published his first tweet on July 29th, 2013, letting the world know that he forgot to wipe his butt. He then tweets that he didn't actually forget to wipe, hinting that he actually likes it that way. His entire account is essentially a pretty detailed documentation of his increasingly more brave experiments with, you know, the brown stuff. A typical tweet of his looks like this: I want to be force-fed meals made with my own mess. Peanut butter and sandwiches, chocolate milkshakes, donuts. His early days mostly consisted of fantasies and made-up scenarios, and this continues for years. Years of him just texting away about his love for Nutella and what he's been up to in his life in general. For example, in August of 2014, he asked the Twitter people if they have messy dreams and what they're like. Or in November, where he described how he's not able to sit without leaving stains. Again, I'm really sorry if you're eating right now. 3 entire years go by, where he buys a car, buys a furry suit, and tries to look for an apartment where he can live out his messy dreams. And at this point, he has sent hundreds of tweets with little to no attention from the Twitter community. He gets a couple of likes, but that's pretty much it. He basically tweets to nobody. In 2016, he then starts to post pictures as well. And do not look them up, but yes, they do contain the poopy. All over hands, all over objects, etc. And I feel like this caption says enough. Finally, here's what was left after I licked everything clean. It was a good meal. I might need to clean my paws, but I have a tongue for that. So slowly but surely, he went from fantasies to actually doing the things he wanted to do, with real proof. All of this very interesting behavior wouldn't go unnoticed either, because in August of 2017, 4 years after his first tweet, Messy Tails tweeted this: Hehe, they can put me in a hospital and make me take pills, but now I'm gone and nobody can stop me from covering myself in the mud. So it's clear that the people around him have noticed his obsession and tried to keep him mentally in check, but it didn't seem to help at all, because just 8 days later he would post, I need to find a way to become psychologically, irreversibly addicted to the stinky, and can't stop eating poopy. In a matter of a few years, that has gone from some interesting fantasies to a genuinely dangerous addiction that already brought him to the hospital once. And his last ever post would be in 2018. Things have been rough lately. I'm going to be okay, but it might take a while. I hope you're all doing well and staying messy. And then he would go radio silent. About a whole year later, around 2019, Barcrow, a random Twitter user, would reply to one of Messy Tails' posts, saying that he has unfortunately died from an overconsumption of his own feces and lack of nutrients. And that is actually what solidified his name within the community. Messy Tails, the person who because they ate their own matter. But there was no actual proof that this account actually knew what happened to the real Messy Tails until 2021, when somebody who also made a video about this interesting individual messaged the account that said all these things, and it turns out it was just BS. So till this day, nobody knows what happened to the real Messy Tails. He might be dead, he might be in the hospital again, or he might still be crunching on his own stuff. Don't Hug Cacti, or DHC, was a very popular company that created fursuits for furries. They would be highly sought after because their fursuits had such high quality and cute designs. The company was founded by Scuff and Lucky, 2 people who were very involved in the furry community. But Lucky would be the reason the successful company would catch on fire and would taint her and her husband's image as these friendly, successful furries. It started on September 25th, 2021, when Cutens published a 100-page document on Twitter with dozens of testimonies accusing Lucky of various crimes, like a document almost worse than the Diddy files. Within the document, there were screenshots of an entire group chat that Lucky was a part of, where she discussed various spicy interests of hers and her being a dom and stuff, with 2 minors in the group chat, fully aware that they were not of age. A I'll go through one of the dozens of testimonies to give you a bigger picture. One person stepped forward and talked about their relationship with Lucky. I call this person Fox. Fox explained how she was very close to Lucky and spent a lot of time with her. They would stay on calls for hours on end until it was late at night. And during these late night calls, Lucky would begin to show Fox non-safe for work drawings of furries. Now Fox was 19 at the time, so it's not illegal, but just kinda weird. But that continued until one day, Fox wanted to go to a party with Lucky. But instead, Lucky allegedly encouraged them to stay at her place to test their drinking limit. Even though, as already said, Fox was 19 at the time, which made her under the legal drinking age. At some point, Fox and Lucky were also more intimate with each other, and Fox described it as a very unpleasant experience. Now, the very next day, Lucky then allegedly proceeded to tell multiple people about what they did, and lied about Lucky taking Fox's first time. But the list of accusations goes on. According to Fox and multiple other testimonies, she was fairly open about being a zoo and having her first time with her dog. Now, there was never any actual evidence to prove these allegations, but she did have a public fur affinity account, which is a platform to post furry art on. And on there, she did upload multiple drawings of German shepherds with various degrees of lewdness. And she drew herself as a dog doing things with German shepherds. The captions also say stuff like, "G-sheps are so handsome, just can't resist," alongside some other comments, which does indicate that she at least had fantasies about this type of stuff. Like, who would genuinely make these drawings and put themselves in these situations just for fun? And the worst thing is, she actually owned a German shepherd as a pet at that time, which makes this whole situation just even more disturbing. Lucky also had a very long history of treating her pets very badly and neglecting them, with a pattern of adopting or purchasing pets just to abandon them when they became too difficult to handle. The document that covered all of this spread like a wildfire, and in order to keep DHC from losing sales and going under, they did a ton of things to try to disprove this, such as making tweets, video statements, and going on podcasts. But all of these attempts weren't enough to disprove the mountains of testimonies that the document had. But somehow, despite all the outrage and hate that Lucky and the company received, the operation is still running and making sales till this day. Zell the Wolf, aka Aaron Thomas Usury, spent a lot of his time on DeviantArt, a relatively normal art sharing platform where he would post art of his furry identity. Around September of 2014 though, he would meet these two 12-year-old girls who liked his art. And yes, it goes exactly where you think it'll go. He could have just said thank you and that's it, but instead he decided to talk to both of them. Their relationship started relatively friendly, talking about art and their problems and stuff, but eventually turned more and more inappropriate as they moved from DeviantArt to Skype and Google Hangouts to keep in touch. After some time, it reached a point where he convinced the girls to send pictures and videos of themselves to Aaron, and of course he would do the same as well. Now, for whatever reason, he also decided to send a video of him having relations with his dog to the 12-year-old girls. This relationship would go unnoticed for months, until the mother of one of the girls actually discovered their videos and chat logs and reported it to the police. On April 11, 2015, the police raided Aaron's home and seized all of his devices, such as laptops and phones, etc. And they found all the evidence they needed, and so he was arrested on April 12th and sentenced to 17 years. So for once, somebody was actually punished for their crimes, which unfortunately isn't the case for the next person. Court Kitty, aka Gabriel Sickle, is a 30-year-old furry who has been in the community for years. He makes music and is kind of a dancer, I guess, but he isn't actually known for any of these artistic endeavors of his. He actually made his first waves within the furry community because of his smell. His fursuit apparently reeked so bad that people were actively avoiding him at conventions. It got so bad that somebody even put a note on his door that literally just says stinker. And given that people walk around with a literal mask on their head at these conventions, which makes smelling things a lot harder, this was an achievement for sure. Now, despite all that, he actually managed to get married, with of course a furry themed wedding, and he became a father as well. And this is where his first serious controversy begins. Once he actually had a son, he decided to bring him to a baby fur meetup. A baby fur is essentially a furry who likes to roleplay as a younger character or a baby. This community also has a lot of common with the ABDL community, which stands for Adult Baby Diaper Lover, which are adults who like to wear baby clothes and diapers. Obviously now, this can probably be something innocent and stuff, but there's no denying that non-safe for work activities are very present within these communities. So bringing your actual infant child to such a meetup would be very, very disturbing. Luckily, he decided to not go through that because of all the backlash he got from that idea. He himself justified it by saying that the idea of bringing an infant child to a baby fur meetup would be pretty funny, and that his intentions were innocent. Well, Court Kitty would also be caught following multiple non-safe for work cup accounts on Twitter. Cup referring to baby animals. And now combine this with non-safe for work. Yeah, you kind of get it, right? So he definitely had some kind of attraction to younger beings. On top of that, he also commissioned baby fur art of his own son, which leaves even a worse aftertaste. Now remember when I said he got married? Well, his wife would divorce him just 3 years after because of exactly these reasons. And some more. During the divorce and fight for custody of the children, his wife would point out that he had bookmarked a guide on having relations with dogs. Yes, a tutorial on how to make love to your dog. And he had also saved the Zoozadis website. Zoozadis being people who derive pleasure from hurting animals. Now he would use the excuse of saying, I was just curious though, and pointed out that he would never actually engage in that type of stuff. Which doesn't really hold up when his wife also pointed out that she walked in on him when he and his dog were doing things with peanut butter. If you don't know what that means, dogs like to lick peanut butter. Gabe would also straight up admit to his wife that he had relations multiple times with dogs, which isn't far-fetched, because he admitted himself that he enjoys videos of cats mating, and followed and was friends with a ton of furries who were proven to be zoozadists, and straight up just PDF files, and they were actually convicted of their crimes, such as Growly, who will come up in just a second. He also talked to a 17-year-old when he was 27, Dr. Disrespect style, and a few more other things. Now Gabriel still tries to defend all of these allegations and still remains active on social media, even though the entire furry community has essentially shunned him. Mr. Teriyaki and Acid Rain Cloud are a couple in the furry community, and at least Teriyaki would be known for his dance performances during conventions or on YouTube, but both of them would actually rise to semi-celebrity status after one particular conversation was leaked. On August 22nd, 2023, Soul Smoothie would post a chat between their partner and Acid Rain Cloud, where Acid Rain Cloud reveals one very disturbing thing Acid and Mr. Teriyaki like to do in bed. Now I'm nobody to judge, but I'm definitely gonna judge what they've been doing. Acid reveals that they like to play with fish. Essentially what they would do is fill Acid Rain Cloud with water and fish, you know, inside. Yeah, some messed up stuff. They would then engage in the act, and most fish would not make it. And the ones that do make it get put back in the bowl, just waiting until they decide to do it again. The self-snitching at this point ends with, it sounds kinda harsh to the fish, but it's kinda amazing. This does indeed not sound amazing. Now let's get into the darkest and most disturbing furries roaming this planet. Carol the Wolf was a very popular furry YouTuber. He's been part of the furry community since 2012, probably before some of y'all were even born. He was also in a Shane Dawson video, where he was interviewed about his life as a furry, and he was one of the people who made this whole thing more mainstream and portrayed it as just a hobby instead of something weird. But of course, he wouldn't be in this iceberg if things didn't take a very, very dark turn in September of 2018. That month, some of Carol's Telegram logs were leaked. And if y'all know anything about Telegram, some sus behavior goes down there. Those chat logs allegedly showed him involved in some pretty disturbing stuff. It basically revealed that he was a part of a circle of furries who participated in not only but also necrophilia, animal torture, and discussions of being attracted to minors, which is all very, very illegal. The original leak came from Zoodenim, somebody who was a part of that circle, and a self-proclaimed zoo. But he himself was so disturbed by all of that he just had to leak it, so you can imagine what was going on. The chat contained Caro and other members of the group talking about doing it with animals that are not alive anymore. He describes how he prefers animals who are already not breathing instead of turning them into this state just for the sake of performing what they want to perform. And a ton of graphic videos were also leaked, and quite a lot of them depict furries inside that group doing the most disturbing things to animals even imaginable. There were so many crimes being admitted in that chat by just Caro alone, such as him doing things to his dog, Coda, and feeling guilty after he passed away. These types of allegations will obviously destroy a person's career, and before those leaks he was one of the big faces of the furry community, and so the internet did a lot of digging to see if the claims were actually true, and Caro obviously denied all of these allegations by saying that he was hacked and it was all fake. Communities such as the 4chan community and Kiwi forums analyzed every single message and video that was sent in there. And it would turn out that the Caro that was in the group chat talked about so many intricate details of his life that it would be almost impossible to fake. But one of the biggest pieces of evidence that would prove that Caro was almost 100% part of his group chat and this community would be the Beast Forum, an absolute vile website dedicated to zoo talking about how they have relations with animals and giving each other advice on that type of stuff. One of the profiles that was active on this very website was called the Dogman 2, just one out of these thousands of registered accounts. But something about this profile was different. On January 22nd, 2012, so way before those leaks would even surface, the Dogman would post a picture of a dog that looked eerily similar to a dog that Caro posted on his public fur affinity page. But if you actually look at the dates, Caro's dog was posted on their forum months before it appeared on any public social media of his, so there was no way that the Dogman 2 just ripped off the image off of Caro's page. His other post on Beast Forum also aligned with the exact timeline of Caro's life. For example, when he moved to a college in Pittsburgh, there was a post from the Dogman asking to meet other zoophiles in the Oakdale area, and coincidentally, Oakdale is a suburb of Pittsburgh. Once people started noticing this suspicious pattern, Caro deleted all of the photos of his dog from his fur affinity account. Caro was obviously panicking and trying to erase evidence. The netizens then found a video of a furry having relations with their dog. Terribly disturbing, but putting that aside, the person who appeared in that video shared a lot of similar traits with Caro, such as having the exact same shoes and the exact same sweater. Now the dog that had to be in that video also had the same facial pattern, same white front paws, same white fur on the chest, and same red collar like the dog Coda. It was pretty clear. Years of chat logs that precisely matches with Caro's life, an account that somehow has access to pictures before Caro was able to post them on any of his socials, and a video that showed a person that matches almost identically with Caro himself. Caro was indeed a zoozadist, and probably more. Once the internet gathered all that evidence, it was submitted to the police, but he was never charged. Most likely because bestiality is treated as a minor crime in New York, so you can only take legal actions for up to 2 years after the crime happened, and the proof was submitted after that 2-year time frame. So legally there was nothing that could punish him. Now Caro is still certain that he's innocent, and even made a couple of videos trying to explain that all of this was fake. But of course, after all this evidence surfaced, nobody believed him. But at least some of the other members in that group chat were actually charged, such as somebody with the name of Snake Thing, who I'll also talk about. Shadow Wolfus is probably the face of disturbing furries, and he earned that title for a reason. To properly introduce him, I'll read you his own bio that he made over a decade ago. I'm a 52-year-old furry bisexual, male, bi, pretty sure you just said that, but okay, and an active plushie file, but it doesn't stop there. As you may know, there's this fact going around the internet that furries will spend thousands of dollars on their hobby. Well, one of the reasons why is because fursuits go for crazy amounts, like you could buy a car with that type of money. So some people decide to create their own fursuits instead. Shadow Wolfus, aka William Bill J. Clark, being one of them. But instead of buying new materials, he would use the plushies that he bought to have fun with and cut them up to make his fursuits. And this is how these abominations were created. That is why he's also known as Carpet Sample. They do not just look even more terrifying than the dolphin muzzles, but also smelled worse. This suit is known as the worst and most disgusting fursuit ever created, and that is because he never cleaned the plushies that he had relations with, and so they reeked of urine and other substances that I won't mention. Every person who met him in real life was probably traumatized by that smell. Shadow Wolfus somehow has multiple pets and openly talks about engaging with all of them regularly, like very open. He described in detail what he did to them without any shame whatsoever. He literally admits to getting these pets only for this one reason, and you can kinda tell by the pictures. His place has trash everywhere, like he does not actually care about the health of his pets whatsoever. One of the tamest statements of his is that he hasn't had any relations with a male husky yet, but will soon once he gets one for a pet. That is the tamest, most family-friendly sentence that he wrote. Shadow Wolfus even dedicated his entire job to his hedonistic pleasures, I guess, since he once was a dog walker, and you can kinda guess what happened to these unlucky animals that had to be with him. He wouldn't be a very disturbing individual only towards dogs and the internet though. First, he got banned from multiple conventions because of his behavior. For example, he was once banned from the Method Fur Meet for proposing to have relations with another furry called Moonstone Wind and her service dog while alone in an elevator with her. Moonstone Wind must have been absolutely terrified, not only because of his proposal that included her dog, but also probably because of his smell. In general, he would just go up to people and start a conversation about all of the disgusting things he does, like just randomly. Not surprisingly, he also convinced a minor to do stuff for alcohol, but luckily he hasn't been active in over a decade now. Growly, or Daniel Mitsuo Lamas, has been in the furry community since 1999. In the year 2000, he met this person online who was really interested in him and his boyfriend at the time, Troy Gate. So interested to the point that he wanted to play with both of them. That person was a minor, and Growly continually told him that he couldn't do anything with him because of that reason. He was a grown adult after all. The conversation between him and that boy continued through 2001, until about March, when his boyfriend and Growly decided to finally meet up with him. Growly didn't actually want to meet up, but was convinced to do so by both his boyfriend and that other person. So Troy and Daniel booked hotel rooms to stay at, and they actually met that person in real life. It eventually got late, and his boyfriend insisted on staying in the hotel room with that boy they talked to. Growly was actually against that idea because it seemed kinda inappropriate, but he was only 24 at the time and young and impressionable, so he ended up staying there as well, and they all slept in the same hotel room. That's it. At least that's the version that Growly told the public. In reality, Growly actually sent inappropriate images to that boy, and once they met up, he and his boyfriend actually got caught having relations with him in that hotel room and took photos during the acts. The boy then actually contacted the authorities on June 4th, and when Growly was just at home with his parents, the police came in and detained him with over 10 charges to his name. He and his boyfriend first denied all of the allegations, but eventually pleaded guilty after months of trying to get a better deal and negotiating. So he served 2 years of a 3-year sentence and became a registered offender for life. It doesn't end there though. When does it ever, right? After being released and finishing his parole, he would be caught again talking to a 16-year-old on Fur Affinity. The 16-year-old talks about being able to do something because of yoga, and I think I sadly know what he's talking about, but I'm not gonna say it out loud. If you know, you know. He then elaborated that he can't show Growly because he's shy, and if word got out, the FBI would be after. Growly of course responds with, he won't report him if he's not of age yet. Spiral Wolf then suggests that he should do yoga too, so he'll be able to do the same thing. And Growly ends the conversation with, you could show me. I won't tell, XD. He really did not take any breaks after being released from prison, because after that conversation got leaked, the internet did just a bit more digging, and they actually found a few other chat logs between Daniel and another guy who wasn't of age either. Growly being 33 at the time, and the other person's 17. Again, I will not go into detail what they actually talk about, but they basically both describe what they would do if they met up and stuff. Imagine like 50 Shades of Grey, but even worse and even more weird. These attempts to do stuff with guys that were literally half his age unfortunately would go unpunished. But the universe did its thing on July 10th, 2019, where he would be charged with possessions of movies that included children. And I'm not talking about Toy Stories. But he was somehow actually released on September 26th, which is crazy. Only a couple of months for literally owning the most deprived videos imaginable. Now all of that did result in him getting banned from a couple of furry conventions, such as Antho Northwest 2017, but he's still welcome to attend most of the other conventions, even though almost the entire furry community is very much against him going on any conventions at all anymore. He also beefed with a lot of people on Twitter who exposed his past, saying that he's a changed person now and stuff, which I don't know if that's how it works. Can somebody like him really just change? But his account is now private. Lockjaw Arts was a company run by Blackcraft Witch, aka Tanya R. Dillard, and their partner Jax Luna, aka Jacob Berkowitz. And similar to DHC, they made fursuits. Now, even though the Lockjaw Arts account was kind of, you know, a company social media account, they didn't only talk about their product, but shared very intimate details about themselves as well, like how they struggled with mental health, depression, and stuff like that. These personal issues cause a lot of delays for the customer, because they might have promised to have a fursuit made until this date, but because of their personal struggles, they weren't able to fulfill the order. And if that happens enough times, business will obviously suffer, because people will lose trust in your company and brand. And that was most likely the case, which resulted in serious financial struggles for them. And safe to say, mental health problems and money struggles are a dangerous combination. In March of 2020, Tanya and Jacob concocted a plan to make some quick cash to get out of this tricky situation they're in. They created a dating ad on Craigslist, which is apparently a thing, I don't know. And Hector Hernandez actually responded. It was definitely some trio lobby kind of ad, because on March 27th, Hector picked both of them up and took them to his residence. Now unfortunately, instead of doing what they actually promised in the ad, they robbed him instead and pew-pewed him 4 times and then stabbed him another 25 times at least, until he passed away in his own bathroom. Now after robbing him, first thing you gotta do is obviously phone a friend and snitch on yourself. And yes, Tanya did exactly that. She called her friend Paige and first told her that she and her boyfriend had taken a dog's dive and skinned it, which was obviously very shocking to hear. But Tanya responded to her disturbed reaction with, "If you think that is strange, I'm sitting next to a not so alive person," and then sent Paige a picture of Hector. And this is where Paige actually drew the line and decided to report the incident to the police. They immediately set up surveillance at Hector's residence and observed the couple. Now their initial plan was to rob him, take his car, and go live in the woods for the rest of their lives. So they eventually decided to execute the second part of the plan and left the house with his Mercedes. To be honest, I don't know why the police just didn't take action immediately, but both Tanya and Jacob would actually be detained after a traffic stop, where they admitted to everything. During the interrogation or interview, Tanya actually told a different story of why they took Hector's life. She explained that they made an ad asking to be driven somewhere, but Hector actually touched Tanya's leg and tried to kiss them, and so Jacob hit him in the spur of the moment. But Jacob just flat out admitted that it was a planned attack, so they were both charged with 4 felony counts, but I couldn't find anywhere how many years they actually got. If you've paid attention to the Carol the Wolf story, you'll have seen the username Snake Thing pop up a couple of times. Well, he is arguably worse than Carol, by far. His real name is Levi Dane Simmons, and he was born on December 20th, 1994. He already got into the whole thing from an early age. His first encounter was when he was around 8 or 9. One day he was just home alone and decided for whatever reason to bend over in front of the family dog at the time. A similar thing to the peanut butter incident that happened. The people around him were also already cautious of him. For example, he was once kicked off of the school bus because he did inappropriate things to his classmates. This sentence sums it up perfectly. He's had problems for a long time. Skipping a few years, when he was in the middle of puberty, he was already getting into the more hardcore stuff in terms of watching and doing, which of course also included animals. And this sick interest of his would only worsen over time. He joined the furry community around May or June of 2010 after he talked about the fandom just out of curiosity with a friend, and he found his kind of people in that community relatively fast. People who shared the same dark, twisted secrets. And so one day he decided to create the infamous Zuzadem Telegram group that I already talked about. He shared his experiences within that group, such as having relations with a literal baby, and he would try to push the others in that group to do these things as well. He liked corrupting them. Like a lot of people that I already mentioned, he took advantage of vulnerable people and animals, like this 12-year-old girl that he convinced to do stuff on camera, who was just very confused and opening up to him, as well as the times where he did things to his sister's dogs. And he also actively enjoyed hurting animals. Probably one of the most sickening stories is how Snake Thing describes in detail how he had relations with a 10 to 12-week-old puppy with the help of a friend. They first gave her medication and then did the most brutal stuff you can imagine. Like literally the most brutal stuff. But it resulted in the dog wiggling and twitching and yelping and whining, despite the medication they gave that puppy. He also said that at least over half the time it was unconsciously done. He was nervous at first, but once he got going, all of his doubts melted away. He described the experience as fantastic. After they were done, he asked his friend to leave the pup somewhere in the town, but he wasn't even sure whether or not his friend just straight up ended the dog. Not just the messages were evidence enough though. They filmed the entire thing and took photos, some of them containing his entire face. And there's actually a reason for that. Normally, if you're a part of such a group, you would try to hide your identity, because you either know deep down that what you're doing is incredibly disturbing and wrong, or you just don't want to get caught by the police. But Snake Thing actually liked that feeling. He liked being blackmailed, and sometimes deliberately shared private information, like his full name, to the others, who could potentially expose him. And he also just liked bragging about the things he did, basically incriminating himself. And that eventually led to his demise. As I already said, Pseudonym eventually leaked the entire group chat and actively led Snake Thing on for 2 entire years to collect as much information as possible, so he would hopefully end up in jail or at least be exposed for the monster he is. With all that information, the internet was basically able to find out everything about him. They found an address, They already knew his full government name, and they quickly found all the alt accounts that he created to try and hack. And all this information was forwarded to the local authorities. But when the police eventually showed up to his place, they found nothing. He and his family haven't actually lived at that address for over a year. And for Snake Thing, all of this happened so quickly that he panicked, and so he even ran from his current home. Around this time, his mother also got wind of all of this stuff happening, because one of his friends admitted to what they did, and she was understandably distraught. Maybe he will come clean to me. Maybe I can